How has the PlayStation 5 held up in the last 12 months? Let's find out. It's no secret that the PlayStation 5 had its fair share of software bugs at launch. Some of the more notorious bugs being a queuing to download bug that would give you a notification that you have an update for a game, but it would never actually install or cancel. Some immediate fixes at the time to fix this sadly were a complete reinstallation of the game, or in worst cases, a factory reset of your entire console. I partially blame the fact that the devs don't allow you to see the downloads tab unless something is downloading, but anyway. Now, me and a friend of mine did experience this bug with the Demon's Souls update, but luckily all we had to do was turn off Wi-Fi so that the game would force stop the download, jump in the game offline, then turn on Wi-Fi again while in the game. Somehow this fixed it for us, but for others online, it didn't. Another big problem at launch was games frequently crashing more than usual. From personal experience, Miles Morales and Demon's Souls never crashed so much that it was unplayable, but they would crash at least once every other night, especially Demon's Souls. Pausing applications to view other options and doing other general stuff sometimes would also make the console freeze or cause it to make a strange buzzing sound. There were more bugs, but I think you get the idea. So what about now? Thankfully, I can say from personal experience that most of the bugs from launch are gone. Most crashing issues, weird freezing, or downloading glitches have been patched, either by Sony or the individual game devs. And overall, the console is very stable in my opinion. Although, you still can't see the downloads tab if something isn't under queue, which is still a shame. Since launch, they've also added a lot of general quality of life improvements to the UI. Things like an icon to better distinguish between PS5 and PS4 games and versions of games, as well as adding things like an option for 3D audio with TV speakers. There aren't themes just yet, which is still a shame, but since launch, I definitely think the system is getting drastically better. On a quick note, I haven't noticed a drop in the SSD's speed. It still feels just as fast as launch day, as long as you keep a few hundred gigs free in your storage. Overall, I haven't had significant problems with loading games either, which is nice. Alright, now for the hardware. Not gonna lie, not much has changed. Every time I put in the disc, it still makes this noise for a few seconds. I have not noticed the fan create any more noise since launch day. It's still as quiet as ever. Even when I play in summer, and it can get quite hot where I live, it still does not pull a PS4 or PS4 Pro and become a jet engine. At least not yet. So it's nice that the effort that they put into the cooling of the system is still working well. On another good note, we can finally use the expandable storage port for another SSD, which was not an option at launch. I literally have only 2 PS5 games from my collection still left installed, so it'll be nice to be able to put all my PS4 titles on the expandable storage once my other SSD arrives. Now let's talk about the DualSense controller. I only used one controller throughout the whole year. At first, the controller was working just fine from my experience, but around mid-2021, I noticed that sometimes my controller wouldn't charge properly, nor would the icon on the screen for how charged it was be accurate. I later found out that it was a problem with the charging cable, and a friend of mine had to replace his cable because it would barely work, but luckily it didn't happen too often for me, so I'm still using the original. The actual controller throughout the year was very reliable. All the buttons still work and feel just fine, except for the L2 trigger. This also happened to a friend of mine, but some sort of spring broke in the L2 trigger. Now it's super loose, and it occasionally gets stuck when you press it. See, it sounds a bit different as well. This one's a fixed one, this one is a broken one. The adaptive trigger part sort of still works, but it doesn't feel anywhere as it should when it's normal, obviously.
Trigger.
What's that?
What happened to it?
Nothing. I think the game is the game. I think the latest update is something to my triggers.
What did it do?
Are they adaptive?
they're like, it's like, even though I'm not pressing it in, it's like, they won't stop looking in. Maybe it's my connection or something. Oh, guys.
Yep.
Enemy vehicle!
Nice job.
It broke around August or so. I can still play games just fine with it, especially recently. It hasn't caused me any problems, but still a shame that they didn't implement something stronger to stop stuff like this from happening often. But all in all, I got around 600 hours with this controller, and still plan to use it in the future alongside a newer one. Alright, now let's talk about the games. First of all, I'm so glad that Sony decided to give the PS5 backwards compatibility, but I'm not gonna lie, it's a real shame that some older games are still locked at their base PS4 frame rate and resolution. For example, games like Bloodborne. I get that it can cause problems to the game, but as a Sony exclusive, it's a shame seeing it not get any love. And for games that run on the PS4 Pro versions, for example Star Wars Battlefront 2, MGS5, these are nice improvements, but they still don't allow you to hit that native 4K or higher frame rates or even ray tracing if they have the option on other systems like PC or Series X. And friggin' Warzone has this poo stain filter constantly on Verdansk. I don't even know what it is, but again, it's running on the PS4 Pro version of the game. Friggin' can't speak properly anymore. What sucks as well is when you have games like the Ezio collection, which are PS3 games essentially, still locked at 30 frames for some reason, while on Series X they're running at 60 frames. And god, this map, does the game drop in frames or something when you're on it? It's still as buggy as ever, but I think you get the point. Many backwards compat games aren't optimized for PlayStation 5, which has been a real shame. But either way, it was still nice that I can even play these games on PS5 in the first place. Also, there were a lot of games that I wanted to play on PS5, so I held off playing them on PS4. And luckily, some of those games did get a dev-specific next-gen version update. For example, Doom Eternal. I loved these upgrades as usually they gave the player the option to switch between a performance or fidelity mode, which was exactly what I wanted when playing these older games for the first time. It just makes the experience that much more enjoyable knowing that you're not locked behind some older version of the game that still takes 30 seconds to load on a next-gen console or is locked at 30 frames. Alright, so what about the PlayStation 5 games? The PS5 games I've played have been an amazing experience. The performance and visuals of all these games have been amazing once they had been properly patched from launch. Out of the PS5 games I've played so far, my two favorite games are still Miles Morales and Demon's Souls. To this day, I still enjoy swinging around in Spider-Man while listening to music. Potential of this console generation's future games by looking at the insane visuals of the current available titles and their crazy fast load times. I can only imagine how the other games in the future build upon these features. As of now, I've played more PS4 games than PS5 games on PS5, but as with every generation, the reliance of the previous gen's games become less and less with every passing year into the new gen of consoles. Overall, I'm very happy with my experience with the PS5 so far. It was bumpy at the beginning, but it's become a very reliable and durable console over the past year. But again, this was all just my personal experience with the console. If you have one, let me know in the comments what your experience was like. This has been the Hero of Sinner. Thanks for watching.